All right. This brings me to some conclusions. Peering scales. Peering is only worth from a financial perspective if you reach a certain volume. Then the cost will be equal like transit or it will be better. The lower the price of IP transit becomes, the higher is the break-even point for peering. And peering is a long-term strategy. Unlike transit, you cannot just plug in and expect you would gain that much. So it's not immediately effective. So peering with route server would make it quicker effective, but if you have to peer bilaterally with hundreds of peers, this will take probably not months. It would take rather years or even decades to make it effective. And then it includes some risk. There is no guarantee if you connect to M6 that the peering target you would actually peer with, or the network you would actually want to peer with, that they are willing to peer with you. So maybe they say, okay, come to M6 and then we can peer, and when you finally establish the connection at M6, they probably come along and say, oh, we changed our minds, you have to fulfill this and this criteria, you have to be also present in links and decks to gain the peering, etc. So it's a game, as we had it this morning already in the simulation. And when you come to peering, you should know beforehand what you want to achieve. So the selection of the right internet exchange and right in marks is actually crucial for your peering success story. If you happen to be in a French-speaking country, probably links is not the best choice. You probably rather go to a French-speaking country in Europe, like in that case it would be France, and peer in Paris, because it's likely that your customer base is getting or pulling more content from French web hosters, which likely are also in France. But saying this, it's not granted. So you have to make your evaluation wisely. I come to that in a minute. So links might be a good choice, but it could be also that DKIX is the better choice, or M6, or none of them. So you should know your traffic sources and destinations beforehand. Usually it's for most African networks it will be the traffic sources, because most networks in Africa, they pull a lot more traffic than they send. If your network is pulling 70% of all the traffic from 5 ASNs, and this is not uncommon, and they don't peer with you on your exchange to select because they're not there or they don't have enough capacity there, the financial gain will be small. So you should do an evaluation beforehand with S-flow or net flow data and determine the sources, destinations of your traffic. So you know the top 20 or top 30 sources of your network. I listed here a number of tools you can use. So it's certainly Arbor Peak Flow, which is commercial and rather expensive and also very powerful. If you cannot afford this but have some clue about open source tools, I suggest to look into the others I've listed. So NFSen is certainly some generic tool you could use. PMACCT is, in my opinion, rather cryptic, but also very powerful if you can interpret the data it produces, because it has no graphs. And last but not least, it's ASStats. This is what we use. INITZ is using that. It's open source. It's rather, I wouldn't say beta, it's probably in alpha status, so it's a bit limited. but it produces nice graphs. So you have here a few examples. The traffic stats we actually know widely. It shows, for instance, as an example, in the top, it's a Sprint. We do some 70 megabit of traffic. We pull from Sprint and we send rather low amount towards Sprint, etc., etc. So my most important ASs I monitor that way. My most important targets or sources of traffic I monitor this way. This shows me where I actually want to peer with, or, which is also important for some networks, it shows me when I reach a certain amount of traffic via a public exchange, let's say 2 or 3 gigabit, it's probably worth to peer with a direct interconnection, so-called PNI, private interconnection. All right, then I would like to come back to the original proposal when our network actually has only 2 times 1 gigabit of traffic or of transit capacity we're buying. How can we make the business case a bit more interesting when we only gain 2,000 euro instead of buying only transit? So what we could do is we could do a remote peering. So we don't buy colocation, we don't put a router in Amsterdam, but we just buy a local STM, probably not STM, but an Ethernet connection from one of the long-haul carrier and plug it directly into the AM6. This is the so-called remote peering. It works. There is no technical restriction which prevents it to work. But if the link fails, let's say there is a C cable cut and it takes a week for repair, then the problem is all your BGP sessions will drop and your peers probably become nervous. And there is also a higher latency to peers, to your peers, so 80 to 180 milliseconds is probably not uncommon. The other thing is you can also do a step-by-step procedure. You buy the long-haul pipe from your country to the places I mentioned, and then you sign with someone who is giving you IP transit there for a good price. So you don't have colocation, you just cut your cost a bit, and when traffic grows or you're ready, you still can add colocation later and put a router, and then put the router between your transit you have in the example in Amsterdam and your long-haul carrier, and then start peering in these locations. Let me say a few words about transit supplier selection. If you buy transit, I suggest you select your transit providers wisely. So the most irritation things causes that some transits call themselves Tier 1. Some Salesforce call them their employers Tier 1, even though they're not Tier 1. So Tier 1 doesn't mean anything, and it's certainly not a label for good quality. Look at the peering policy of your next transit supplier. What is he doing? Is he open, selective, or closed? The latter sometimes is likely to have consequent of congested links. If they're not peering openly or widely, sometimes their peering links get congested and you have trouble reaching some destinations because not your link is full, but the transit supplier's link is full. I especially want to mention some European incumbents, the former monopoly player in a number of countries. My experience says don't buy from them because they often face congested links, congested peering links for political reasons. Not going to mention names. When you buy transit, think of how many transits you actually need. Buying from more than 3 is usually not recommended because traffic engineering becomes more difficult, and also why the fragmentation of volumes. So if you buy 2 times 1 gig, if you need 2 gig capacity, or if you buy 4 times 500 meg, if you need this would also be 2 gig capacity. This would be a significant difference in price. So the more you buy from someone, the better price it will be. And last but not least, try before you buy. Some transit suppliers will allow you a 4-week trial free of charge. So you have the actual installation, you plug in for, you have to order the cable, you have to set up everything, but if you don't like the service, just unplug and you're out of the game again. You can choose someone else. And ask around. If you have this community, you have your local NOC community, ask what they think about the various suppliers before you actually sign a contract. Is their NOC responsive? Do they have a resolution in a good time when they have routing issues, etc.? So you can certainly ask personal in this community or on other communities, or use the FNOC mailing list or FPF mailing list to get opinions. And last but not least, price is certainly relevant, but it's not the only selection criteria to buy transit. So I come to the conclusion remarks. Big names often not the best choice. I mentioned this already. Learn from other people's mistake. It's better than learning from your own mistakes. And peering is not a short-term strategy. You will harvest the fruits of peering seeds only in a couple of years, likely. If you start peering on a wide scale, it won't have an immediate financial effect. And last but not least, have a clear picture what to expect when you start peering. So this would certainly prevent frustration. Happy peering.